Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review episode 5 of Loki season 1, of course. Really, I kind of do have this feeling that they could just keep chugging along with this show. If they wanted to do a season 2 of this, I wouldn't say no to that because I feel like there is so much here that there's so much untapped, there's so much potential that this could go in, especially after this episode was to go off, where it's like, well, hey, they could still they can go into this route with this show. They probably could still uh, do things to consistently keep going with this story because it feels like this could be an endless endeavor. And so, really, this could be a very interesting show that continues to go along the way it is. It kind of feels like we are to eventually, quite possibly, get rid of variants. Maybe variants will eventually dissolve, and stuff that they are to end up to do, maybe it's just like, well, I guess that's just how the thing is going to play out now. And so that will be really interesting to see what happens with this show. Like, that maybe they'll have variants go back to where they belong, and maybe they're really going to mess up all of their timelines. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see the gigantic rift that is to happen if everyone is to go back to their timelines as if they never, as if everything is perfectly fine, as if everyone is getting a second chance, which I think would be interesting. But who knows? If anything, this episode is to continue off of the end credit sequence of the last one, where Loki is to be introduced to multiple Lokis, a future Loki, a kid Loki, and a boastful Loki that kind of has this kind of Craven the Hunter kind of attire, where he has this kind of like Craven the Hunter slash, I would say he has some kind of mixture of Wakanda slash Craven the Hunter kind of get up, and he of course is bald. So it seemed, honestly, for most of this, they kind of chucked just a lot of Lokis in here, and none of them were really held to actual importance. And plus, I was expecting them to do all kinds of goofy things. I was expecting an animated Loki. I was expecting a Jedi Loki. I was expecting a Where is Waldo Loki or something like that. Some goofy kind of thing that doesn't make sense, but would have just been fun for this episode, because I was expecting them to just make a crap ton of Lokis so that way they could probably merchandise this out to somewhere, basically by making limited edition statues of specific Lokis that people could collect at a pretty decent price, or a pretty fat price, because limited edition. And so, I was expecting, a bajillion Lokis to pop out of this episode, but if anything, we actually got maybe somewhere along the lines of maybe about, 10 Lokis. So, I was expecting a lot more. I was expecting, at least, 40 or 30 to 40 Lokis, I was kind of expecting, but, I guess, that would have just held up the story a lot more, and really, people would have probably just been oh, so they're really just trying to, merchandise the crap out of the show, which I don't even think they're actually seemingly doing. But anyways, moving on, getting to the point. So what is to go on in this episode is to really deal with Loki, who had gotten pruned And so we find out that everyone who is to get pruned is to all go into one location called the Void. And so now we have to eventually figure out, because there seemingly is an enemy on this Void, how to take that thing down. And then eventually that is to lead us to quite possibly the next episode. But really, it's just to kind of have all these Lokis all in one place. Also, it is to mostly just kind of feel like a transitional episode, in all brutal honesty. Like, you get a little bit of Renslayer, a little bit more of like what Renslayer wants within this episode, and it's kind of to kind of play the fence of things, or it seems like she is trying to go with the bouncing ball to find out who has the most information the quickest, and then try to like choose temporary sides. It seems like Renslayer could be a double agent at some point. Like, she's only working for herself, or she's only working for information that she could have that no one else can. And so I thought this episode was transitional, but I thought it was interesting. So with that said, I think that's all that I could go out of my way to say. There's a lot of fun Lokis in here. There's a lot of goofy things that they do with Tom and with all of these other Lokis in this episode. But yeah, like, and also I can say there are some cool things that they do with Loki's powers in these in this episode. Whether it is actually like really and truly this Loki, or it could be any number of other Lokis that we are to see their real true power. And pretty cool episode overall. It just feels transitional. Like, it's just like, yeah, they're just kind of biding time for the next episode that is going to have maybe a big reveal, I'm hoping, because hopefully this is not just like, oh man, this is going to take forever for us to get to this one spot, and then when they finally do, there's going to be a big reveal of who the villain is, and they're like, oh, next episode, like, mother... Like, I'm hoping that they get to who the big bad is in the next episode, like, freaking right away, so we can play with that. Like, if they're just gonna give us the big bad at the very tail end of that episode, because I'm sure they're gonna have them do, like, side quests or find somebody that we might remember or know or whatever, which would also be cool, but still, But anyways, so let's get into this, because I've already been talking about this for 8 minutes. It's about that coveted time yet again. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this episode. I'd 3-gun trigger that one, because whatever. So Loki is to wake up after getting pruned to have 3 Lokis that are to surround him. They don't have Sylvie names. They are all just like, hey, well, like, I'm older Loki, I'm kid Loki, I'm another Loki, because he doesn't actually say what his name is. They just call him like boastful Loki on the IMDb page. So that's, I guess, what his name is. So Loki is not understanding where he is, what's going on, whose end or what anything is. So future Loki is to tell let's go with Dark World, or no, Avengers Loki. Let's go with Avengers Loki. So variant Loki is going to be Avengers Loki. I'm not going to call him variant Loki. I'll just call him Avengers Loki, because technically he was from the Avengers movie, and that's all he knows. So future Loki is telling Avengers Loki, like, hey, like, this is the void. The big smoke like monster is Eliath, and we need to get the heck out of here because these Lokis are trying to avoid Eliath. This Eliath is a thing that is to eat all of the variants that are to come there and to destroy it. And I'm like, wait a minute, like that seems kind of bizarre. Plus, also, like, I'm kind of expecting with the way every name is spelled or whichever, I'm kind of expecting, bizarrely, there to be some, like, acronym or some kind of something out of this. Where I'm kind of expecting, like, if you, like, switch the letters together, it comes up with another word or something. Like, I was thinking that maybe, like, Sylvie had that same kind of thing where it's like when you technically look at it, like she has like evil almost technically here in her name, and but then like or evils, uh, evilly, evilis, evilis, uh, bizarrely. Anyways, so but I was kind of expecting there be to be like some goofy switch around thing that all of a sudden there'd be like this big reveal of something for someone. But anyways, so that's what I was expecting. It's like a Harry Potter situation where you kind of mix some words together and it comes up like Voldemort or something. But anyways, moving on. So these guys are to go on to go into this underground bunker, and and so uh, and so we'll get to that. So let's get to Renslayer and Sylvie. So Sylvie is trying to help Renslayer kind of understand what all is going on, and because it seems like Sylvie knows a lot more than Renslayer does. And so Renslayer is to desperately ask Miss Minute or Miss Minutes to try to look up a bunch of information, like a bunch of files and stuff like that. And Sylvie is to try to talk to Renslayer, and Renslayer is like, well, maybe Sylvie, like, maybe I should work with you. Like, maybe, like, it seems like both of us want answers on who's the man behind the curtain. And, like, funny enough, like, I was thinking, like, the whole entire time that they were going to use this analogy, like, they were going to use a Wizard of Oz like thing, and it's the man behind the curtain, because I'm like, yeah, like, I'm assuming that this is going to be like there's going to be a great and powerful Oz that's going to come out of this, and like the robot guys were just some uh just some like smoke screen, but then eventually there was going to become like a great and powerful Oz that's going to come like behind the curtain kind of thing. And it's good that they actually went with that analogy in this episode. So, which could still be Kang the Conqueror. Probably not. Like, he's the only guy I know that deals with time. Who else deals with time? Could it be Captain America all along? Like, hey, Loki, Captain America. I just hated that you that you shifted into me in the dark world, so I'm coming to get back at you. Yeah, I'm old Captain America. I'm still alive. No, that's not gonna happen. But it would be funny though, right? It would be a weird like spin of the story, which would confuse the heck out of people. Uh, but anyways, so eventually the TVA come in, and so Sylvie is to kind of like be on guard because Renslayer was to tell Sylvie about what happens with anyone who gets pruned is that they go to the void, and then the void has like technically the end of time because they're thinking it's like, well, because Sylvie was thinking that when she was to try to prevent doing any Nexus events, she would go when the world would end, and or when some world would end event. So really, Sylvie thought that this big villain would probably be doing the same thing, like show up at the very beginning of the time or show up at the very tail end of it. And so Renslayer is like, well, you know what? That seems like a pretty good idea, but it seems that you probably have to go into the void to go to the point of the end of time or to the next step of where this villain would probably be. You would have to defeat Eliath and make your way through this void to make your way through to this villain. And so Sylvie is just like, well, okay then. Like, I guess that's what I'm going to have to do. So Sylvie is to hide from the TVA, and so Sylvie is to prune herself and go into the void. And so Renslayer, now that there's no Sylvie there, Renslayer is to go off and ask Miss Minutes to give her every bit of information about the development of the TVA, like the very origin story of the TVA via like paperwork or files or something. And Miss Minutes is like, man, that's going to be a hard thing to find. That's going to take a while. And Renslayer is like, I don't care. Just find it. So I guess to see if anybody made any mistakes, if anybody like was like, "Hey, Booga, I'm a villain here, putting this whole thing together." So, so eventually we also have Renslayer who is talking to B-15 in this episode, and she's talking to her because of what had happened to lead her up to the point of wanting her to free Sylvie and talk to her about what about like kind of the decisions that she made and just kind of talk to her and kind of like do a debrief and stuff like that and kind of just talk about some things and like how they feel about their kind of aftermath of finding out that they're actually have lives besides this, and that people like Renslayer have probably been holding this information from a number of people, and now they don't have like a choice in to learn this information or not. And so like I'm kind of paraphrasing and going all over the place, like give people the choice to realize that they are now variants and give them the freedom to be able to decide whether they want to know this information or not, continue to be with the TVA, and bop, 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 bop. So Sylvie also takes the TemPad that Sylvie had taken from like Renslayer in the whole beginning of this to have Sylvie just kind of go wherever the heck that she wants. So Sylvie took with her a TemPad, and so let's get into this. So Sylvie is to make it onto this place, and so she is to immediately see Eliath, and then all of a sudden she is to see a car driving up that looks like a pizza delivery man, which I'm like, okay, that seems weird. So immediately Sylvie just runs into this car, and we find out that it's Mobius. And so Mobius is like, hey, like, you're like being pretty risky just jumping into a man's car. And so Sylvie is telling Mobius to, like, hey, like, watch where you're driving, because if anything, I think you're driving right into one of these like clouds of this Eliath thing. And so Mobius is like, God, you guys are all the same. Like, you definitely, like, I definitely can prove that you are a Loki. So, like, Eliath is to get really close to Sylvie, and I guess since Sylvie was so close to this, evidently she drew a link from that. Like, she drew a link to be able to go into YouTube video to see what any of that meant. It's a joke. I'm joking. A link. You get the joke? Anyways, so you probably don't. It's okay. So back with all the Lokis, and we find out there's also a alligator Loki. Isn't that pretty sweet? Like, man, if I could just toss, like, they should have heavily merchandised the crap out of that, like, alligator Loki. Like, man, I'm sure all the alligator guys are just like, oh my god, this is, like, all I can do is put a Loki helmet on an alligator, and, like, $1 million thing right there. Like, I could have people taking pictures with alligator Loki, and it could be any alligator Loki. It could be any alligator that looks like Loki. And, like, man, that's gonna be a cha-ching cha-ching like money making scheme. So if anything, we have these guys talking it out. And so Loki is to ask future Loki, it's like, well, hey, like, if anything, I desperately need to know about your timeline. Like, how is it that you dodged being able to not die from Thanos? Like, I need to know. And so future Loki, because he was the only one who survived the onslaught of Thanos in Infinity War, but you didn't see this Loki in this run. So in Infinity War, because believe me, I just watched it. I did it. I saw it, and eventually I'll get it reviewed. Probably maybe not the next day, but maybe the day after. Because I'm trying to, like, pace these Marvel movies out. Because if I put a ton of Marvel movies all in one spot, then a lot of people will be like, "Hey, I want another superhero movie," and I'm like, "Yeah, I got nothing. My my pockets are empty because." I blew the whole thing in one day. Blew the whole thing in one day. Yeah. See that one more time, and that'd be weird. So, anyways, so Avengers Loki is talking to future Loki. And it's like, hey man, how did you dodge Thanos? And so this Loki is to say, like, well, hey man, like, if anything, a lot of Lokis tend to use their blades, and that's great and all, but if anything, it's just not as good as just straight up using our magic. Like, I think Loki is way underestimating how much actual power he does have, and that Loki could probably do anything that he really, like, can think up, and he could probably do. And so, like, Loki's heavily underestimating himself. So future Loki is to mention that he did a hologram of himself or a clone of himself so good that it fooled even the Mad Titan Thanos. And so what happened is that Loki watched his own echo of himself die, and then Loki just kind of just faded away off to the side and just waited for, I guess, this ship to just destroy itself. And then Loki decided to live the rest of his days on this planet for a very, very long time. But then eventually Loki wanted to desperately get off this planet because eventually he realized how much he missed his brother. He missed people because he was on a planet all by himself. And so this future Loki decided that he wanted to step off this planet and desperately try to get back to the other Asgardians. And that's immediately when the TVA stepped in and like, dude, Nexus event. Like, this Loki was supposed to die in every single run with Thanos snapping his neck. And so if there is a Loki that is to not fall for that rule, a Nexus event is to be created. And so every single Loki has to die by Thanos. There is, like, unless the TVA is resolved or dissolved, then Loki can finally not die from Thanos. But really, it would be kind of cool for them to replay Endgame all over again, or just that one scene to like give us like how in the very beginning of this they give us like extra scenes from Avengers or technically Endgame. Like, it would be kind of cool if they gave us like the back end or the very beginning of Endgame, like legitimately like where Loki is to die and we are to just see like Loki just kind of watching on as like Thanos is technically killing a hologrammed Loki or a mimicked Loki, and so like Loki is just like safe. Or it'd be kind of cool if Loki took like in his back pocket like one of those like variant Lokis that look like him, and Thanos would have killed that guy, and then Loki would have been like, ha ha ha, like, I got out of here scot-free. Isn't that great? Because that could have been a option. But anyways, so bizarrely, they're looking at this alligator, and they're like, God, like, why is there an alligator Loki? But eventually, alligator Loki comes into fray, and eventually, like helps out. So Loki is to call upon all the other Lokis to say, "Hey guys, like we gotta try to get our way out of here. I'm waiting. Uh, like I need to get out of here. Like I need to go back to Sylvie and try to help her." And so we got to figure out a way to do that. And so all the other Lokis are like, it's like, dude, the only way we're going to be able to do that is beat Goliath. And there's no way we're going to be able to do that. Like, if anything, like, we're not going to, like, paper cut the wind. Like, it's not like, if anything, like, we're not going to be able to take Goliath down. If anything, we're just going to get eaten and destroyed. And plus, there was no real true plan making their way to Goliath. It was just like, well, like, I guess I can find its heart or its brain and kill that in a shadowish, like, figure. That makes a whole lot of sense. So, Loki is just like, well, okay, then I guess I'm just going to leave because you guys are all just going to laugh at me. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to fight this thing if it means, like, I'm going to fight it by myself. So Loki is to open this one bunker, and immediately he is to be met by I'll call him President Loki, because that's what it looks like. It looks like a Loki that is campaigning to be the leader of all the other Lokis. So we have candidate Loki, or President Loki, making his way down to where all these other Lokis are, and so Kid and future Loki are just like, hey, like, you led them down here, Avengers Loki. It's like, hey, like, if anything, like, I didn't know, like, I didn't know they were coming, I didn't know they were here. So, President Loki is just like, yeah, like, this is great. If anything, now we can kill off Kid Loki and we can kill off, uh, future Loki, and then I could become like the ruler of all the Lokis. That's what President like Loki is thinking. And boastful Loki is like, no, like, if anything, from what I thought was going to happen is like you guys would kill off these other Lokis, and then I would become king because that's why I led you guys all down here, and I told you exactly where to go to get to these Lokis. Because the kid Loki is technically like this is his place. Like I guess he was like the first original Loki to appear here. I'm assuming or assessing, so that's kind of like this is really like his home compared to everyone else. So and plus also like Avengers Loki asked Kid Loki, well, hey, like what was your Nexus event? And Kid Loki had mentioned that he had killed Thor. Like, ooh, like, so he was the only one to actually achieve killing Thor, but I wonder how. Like, did he, like, kill him in his sleep while he was still, like, a young kid? Like, what happened with that? Plus, also, I'm, like, so excited about Kid Loki because it seems like there's a huge potential for this character, but I'm kind of wondering where they're going to go with that. Like, it would be kind of interesting to see a Kid Loki kind of having a kind of what's the word, a spin-off. Like, I would definitely watch that, but who knows. So maybe they might want a bigger named actor or whichever. I don't know. I don't. It doesn't really matter to me. But anyways, so we find out that eventually President Loki, all the other Lokis that are with President Loki, they decide to uh, say, well, hey, you know what, President Loki? Like, your plan is great, but, like, all the other Lokis are like, yeah, I'm gonna want to go and kill you off. And so President Loki's like, seriously? Like, my own men are turning on me? It's like, yeah. So it just gets to where Loki, Avengers Loki, and Future Loki, and Kid Loki are all just going and attacking all these other Lokis while basically everyone is just fending for themselves, whoever is just on whichever's own side. It gets to where Alligator Loki is to bite off President Loki's hand, and so he's just like ah, and then he just falls over. So really, it's just like the Loki's just battling it out, and it seems we're consistently to see future Loki just mostly using his powers of uh, like cloning himself to just kind of exhaust a lot of people and try to take them out that way. So eventually, this leads to future Loki and Kid Loki and Avengers Loki like leaving, and everyone is to eventually just die, to just be killed off in this whole like fight out. So Loki is to make his way to making it to the Alliance because like that's their big game plan. And so uh Kid Loki uh and future Loki are just to follow him because they're like, well, I guess we have nothing better to do. So and so Loki, they're coming up with a game plan of what exactly to do. And so all of a sudden Loki is to eventually spot a car, and so Loki starts running out to the car, and so future Loki's asking Kid Loki. It's like, well, like, is he running to that car because he's a coward or is he brave? Like, but Sylvie is to get out of that car, and so that's the reason why Loki is to run to the car, and he is to also like see Mobius there, and it's like, well, hey, like I'm gonna go after Eliath, and so like, are you guys kind of coming? Mobius is to get a Tempad, and he is to go back to the TVA and like try to either dissolve things or try to get people on his side and like try to like form a rebellion, I guess. So, and more than likely he's probably going to free like B-15 right away. I'm assuming probably maybe the next episode is probably going to tie maybe a lot of Mobius stuff, so that way like Mobius can free a lot of his people, like a lot of the good people. Maybe they're gonna find like C-20 is probably gonna be still alive, and so maybe Mobius will free her too. Like, I don't know, that would be kind of fun. So that way they don't kill anybody. Because if they did prune like C-20, like Hunter C-20, shouldn't she have been in this void? Anyways, so uh Sylvie is to tell the Lokis what her game plan is that she is going to actually just enchant the Eliath, and they're like, ha 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 ha, that sounds stupid. And Sylvie's like, well, like if anything, we're not gonna be able to attack it. Like, there's no way to fight a shadowish creature like with just like weapons or like you have to fight it with magic. And so Kid Loki gives Avengers Loki a sword, and so now bizarrely, Avengers Loki now has to do this like bizarrish like Captain America uh like backpacky like thing with this sword where yeah, that looked so bizarre. Like, he was like, oh, he has like Captain America like kind of like the sword on the back thing. Okay, I guess that's like what they have to do bizarrely in every single one of these things is like create some kind of like Captain America backpack situation. I guess is like another merchandisable like prop that eventually they can make somewhere or whichever. So I'm sure anybody's gonna probably cosplay the heck out of this. Believe me, it's going to happen. I bet they're gonna probably sell the sword somewhere. So, uh, so future Loki and Kid Loki are like, yeah, I don't think that we're going to go with you guys because our place is here. Like, our home is here. Like, if anything, we're just going to go with you, but I don't know if we're really going to actually go and leave here. Because, like, all we wanted was to be here and stay here. And so, like, this is our home. So Mobius goes off back to the TVA. Avengers Loki and Sylvie go off to fight Eliath, and so uh, Sylvie is trying to figure out a way to use her enchantments on this Eliath, and Loki is trying to distract it with his sword. We are to find out that this sword bursts into flame, and so Loki is like, "Hey, ha ha!" Like, he's basically pulling off the Jurassic Park maneuver with T Rex, where like, "Hey, like." Put this flare in the air and the dinosaur will just track where you are. Like, that's basically what he's doing. So, this leads to eventually like this not exactly working out. Like this is just not strong enough for just Sylvie to try to use this enchantment. So future Loki comes into the play and just recreates Asgard as an illusion. And so Eliath is to go to this hook, line, and sinker. And Sylvie's like, oh my god, how is this Loki doing this? And Loki's like, yeah, I guess we vastly underestimate our own power. That this guy can come up with the illusion of Asgard to where this thing is consistently trying to break it and destroy it, and it's just not working. And eventually, this guy eventually runs out of power, and then the Alioth just eats future Loki because technically, like, this guy is probably going to be dead already, anyways. He's not going back to his time, and yeah, anyways. So moving on. So both Avengers Loki and Sylvie are to go and use enchantment powers together, so Loki has to quickly learn how to do this. And so both of them use their enchantment powers, and that is to annihilate and destroy Alioth and create this hole that is to get them into what is to be the next thing, which is going to be the next episode, which is going to be whatever is to happen next. So there might have stuff that I didn't kind of clearly mention of things, kind of rush through stuff, but anyways, I'm also going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.